on U.S. Equipment and military. And then also, like, even with Iran, they don't give a fuck about Iran, to be honest. And the instability within that region. So, like, this is a thing, and we can't just blame it on one country. This is like, it's history on history on history, and then what each country looks like. So they can rein them in. Why not?
Okay.
Why is the Arab community not reining them in?
Can I finish my submission, though, Ms. Patty?
That's the ceiling
That's your
fan.
submission, and I just answered
That's
your
Brandon's work.
But I disagree with that, so that's
Go
why
ahead.
I'm
Now you
not
can
the
go
fan
back and
blades.
you can disagree, and then you can say, but don't say you cannot finish my submission. You were done with your submission. I just answered your question. Now you
okay.
can go to.
I don't want no problem. I apologize. Okay. Listen. So what I'm trying to say is the same reason that we have our problem today, which was because of solidarity with Palestinians, is the same reason why the Hezbollah started to firing the rockets at that time, right? Remember, this was all over the Israeli situation. I believe this was, and I might be saying this word wrong. So if you guys, that Israeli, pro-Israeli people, if you can help me, is it called the Sheba farms or Sheba farms, right? Right? And so at that time, right, I think that what I'm trying to say is that
The
every
ticking
time
noise is
that
also
these people
indicative
do
of a
something in
film,
solidarity with
a
the
movie
PLO,
theater, a
they're acting as
speak
we're looking at them as terrorists, but we're not looking at the instigator in this. So we're calling them the instigator when there's only one prime instigator, which is Israel. And so what I'm saying is that when they invaded Lebanon back in the day, are you saying that Lebanon just had no reason to have a problem with Israel? Or are we just saying that they just came out and, I want to kill an Israeli today? I don't understand the point here to make it seem like Hezbollah forming that is wrong because of what they did back in the day. Like I said, Israel invaded Lebanon. It wasn't the other way around.
I'm happy to respond if nobody else wants to.
I'm confused with what he's saying because, like, this is the problem. When you look at Shia identity or marginalization of Shias, right? Lebanon has a Shia Muslim community, and then they're supported by the Islamic Revolution. So, like, when it comes to it's like a really that's why I say it's really complicated. Like the Middle East, this is all around religion, and this is how I feel. I feel it's all around religion. Nobody gives a fuck about the Shia population. And then some of the stuff that they're doing, it may be them protecting or trying to protect what they feel is rightfully theirs. But then again, this is still going to be a Middle East problem, and that's not only to include Israel, that would be, and to include Qatar, that would be to include Bahrain, that would be to include Jordan, who doesn't even really, to be honest with you, they probably don't care what happens to Palestine at this point because of historical shit that's happened in the past. They're only protecting themselves. Like these Middle Eastern countries really are not on the same page as what you think they're on. They're only doing certain things because of their population and them saying, "Oh, we're all Muslims, we're still brothers." But outside of that, like, there's no real support. So if you look at how Hezbollah was conceived, this is part of Iran's prodigal to like export their own Islamic revolution. Like, and when it comes to foreign proxies, Iran is probably the most powerful when it comes to funding or training, guidance when it comes to ideology. Like, this is not something, it's very complex. And how you're speaking on it, it's like mentally in my brain, and that's why I'm getting confused with some of the stuff that you're saying. It's like you're only taking a bit of information and not understanding the whole.
Can I maybe throw something in there?
Go ahead.
Look, and this is something I think we can all maybe learn from. It's one thing if you're standing like in an area, you see a wall that's dividing two people. Factually, you've got a wall there. You could also give an opinion and judgment and say, well, it's a shame that the wall has been, put up and is dividing two people. But to be able to leave it there and be angry for one side putting up the wall and blaming them for the separation doesn't get into the nuance and context. Understanding and reaching a reason why was there a wall put up to start off with is a key question to be able to put up there. And it's like if we learned that, terrorists were going over this line and they were killing innocent people, and that's the reason why the wall was put up, then that's an understanding of the why. But understanding, well, has it been effective or not? Well, that's another thing. And if you find that 97% of terrorist attacks and killings have been stopped, then you'd have to say, well, actually, I understand now why the wall's put up. I would have done the same thing myself. The same thing goes to to these comments. Like, well, Israel didn't initiate military attack against Lebanon. In 1982, the reason why Israel needed to be able to go in there, yes, Israel did go in there, but only after continued PLO attacks and an assassination attempt on the Israeli ambassador in London. And the same thing goes in 2006. Israel was at war with Lebanon because Hezbollah crossed over the border, killed 3 people and captured 2 Israeli soldiers. So there was a need to be able to, for Israel to be able to do that, to be able to catch up. So, yeah, you're right in saying that, Israel is at war with multiple people, but understand at the same time, like Hamas, their charter, are you familiar with their charter, New?
Yeah, I've heard.
Is it new?
Times. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, did Israel force Hamas to be able to write their charter? In Article 7 of their charter in 1988 clearly states what its objective is, and that is to be able to kill all Jews. They're a Nazi organization, effectively, and to be able to wipe Israel off the planet. Now, do you seriously think that you could be friendly? These two parties could be friends and shake hands and go on the playground with each other? You'd be silly to think that they can. 2 people need to be able to find common ground to be able to achieve a common outcome. And there's a reason why there is a complex situation which is there. But it could be very simply put like this. If Hamas chose to be able to put down their weapons and want peace, there'd be peace. If Israel chose to put down their weapons, there'd be no Israel. And because of that, there's a reason for Israel to be able to defend itself at all costs. It's their responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait. One second. Wait, Levon, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I mean, we have Kim Jong-un in North Korea that has a nuke, and he's constantly threatening, have an infrared threat towards South Korea. Is anybody doing preemptive strikes against them? I mean, we're just going to ignore international law and have Israel get away with this stuff. I mean, we're talking about a live stream genocide that's going on every single day. None of these people have clean hands every single day. And we're just going to ignore that and just blow up international norms and do preemptive strikes. That's not, I don't care what anybody's chanting. The plan is not allowed to work. And we do all of this subterfuge, and then we want to act surprised that they're going to withdraw from, which was the original topic of the IAEA. How are we better off based on what Netanyahu and Trump just did? In fact, we're worse.
Point of order. Who modded Mother? Stop the program. Who?
I'm sorry, I have to do it. Alright, I'll move myself to the audience now. It's fine.
Wow. That's crazy.
Hold on, cash in that big ticket for
Hey,
Miss Pat.
so, I had something I wanted to say. Am I free to go?
Where's
Should I-
First Lady? Can someone bring her back up?
Can I speak on what I wanted to say, or should I?
sphere of just a few people, I feel like the bar is raised. I don't think the bar is lowered. I mean, some people I think take it as sort of an invitation to have a dual life, and personally, I don't think it's very healthy. But also, I think that it's a bad habit to get into. I mean, you've just seen so many situations where it just becomes impossible to guard sort of the many-pronged, faces of living a life. And I know in early psychology and psychoanalysis, they were always talking about these blank slate therapists, blank slate analysts, and I don't believe in blank slate anything. And so
somebody has a room called Trump and MAGA are racist.
Because I think congruency is this. As I've heard it said lately, it's about the realness. It's about can you connect with somebody and does it feel genuine? Does it feel easy?
I've watched people now,
and talking about fake leadership or whatever how you put that, it does make a lot of sense, because how can you? It just I think it puts you in a position at home. You're sort of this one thing. You go to work. I mean, I get you have different personas you're putting on, and those are functional, and that's fair to do. And I think some of us have more pressure or less pressure to do that. But I think you're on the money when you talk about congruency being a really important aspect of being a good leader. Having integrity, yada, yada. And good morning, Susie. Good morning, Steve. Anyone want to try?
Yeah, I would like to. The first page of the Dhammapada, which is an ancient Buddhist text, says that everything comes from the mind, and that basically what you focus your mind upon is what grows and flourishes. And so if you put that together with with other Buddhist texts, what they say is you suffer through life if you're, so to speak, not congruent, to use your words. If you are not, your mind, living according to your mind, understanding your mind. If you're in conflict with yourself, your mind, whatever, you're going to suffer. And so people who are inauthentic, who are fake salesmen, like that Always Be Close. What was that movie? The real estate movie. It was a play and then became
Gary Glenn Ross.
Yes, thank you. That's it. Always be closing. You have to be in some kind of agreement with your own mind, or number one, the people around you will see it. Number two, there's no way to lead effectively if you don't really know where you're leading from and why and where you're leading to. And this is Barbara's territory, not mine. But one good thing, I suppose, about psychological training and the kind of studying and deep diving that you've done, Dr. James, and do on a regular basis is examine congruency and try to bring people into agreement with their own minds, so to speak.
Including self.
Actually, Dr. James, just quickly, cognitive dissonance. You could look at cognitive dissonance from a psychological perspective, is what this is referring to from a Buddhist perspective.
Right.
I'd love to add one more thing. Just what you said, Dr. James, I don't want that to be missed when you said including yourself. Because what we often find, so we do these leadership assessments, right? Which is called a 360. So your peers assess you, your direct reports assess you, your boss assess you, and you assess yourself. And what we see often is that and I'm going to put a gender lens on it too, right? Men tend to overestimate their self in terms of, on a scale of 0 to 10, how effective are you in whatever, right? Valuing people, valuing differences, or something like that. And women tend to underestimate themselves, right? Under assess themselves, right? But the point is that there's an incongruence between self and others, right? So important to have that kind of deep dive on, wow, I thought I saw myself like that, but that's not how I occur or how I land for others, right? So how can I create congruence between my intentions, which is to be respectful, inclusive, and effective, whatever, right? And how I actually land for the people. That's the learning. And I love what you said, calling out the self. So I'm done for now. Thanks.
Interesting, Barbara. I think one of the first times that I opted to do a little mini talk in here, I did a talk around these types of biases and some of the differences in the way gender is both perceived and experienced from kind of a psychological framework. And I really do think that's on the money and it's not to be missed. And yeah, the reason why I say self is because, and this is something I brought up right at the end of the time we had here yesterday, was in psychology, if you're getting a degree through an American Psychological Association accredited school, there's a requirement you have a minimum of a year's worth of personal therapy. And I think that's part of sort of the ethos to do no harm, because, obviously we want to get a bit more in touch with, things we may be missing about ourselves as part of the process of being helpful. And I think it's good. I appreciate the work you do. We probably have a lot of overlap in terms of some of the things we've experienced, but you're coming from much more kind of seasoned, experienced place from that, and I'm kind of at a new start of a new career. But it's kind of not a new career, but becoming licensed is going to be a new bag of kind of ethics to hold. And one of the things that I thought about a bit is on the other side of a license, one really becomes kind of an autonomous agent of personal and professional ethics. And the only thing at that point holding someone back from, doing harm or doing some sort of thing that could get them into hot water, I think, is really just having developed over time habits that continue to evidence practicing ethics in their lives, and having some values that they understand and they can sort of anchor to. And I think this is really kind of an important thing. And I think earlier I was asking about kind of the perception of different professions. Different professions, there is more of an expectation. If you're a police officer, you may be considered very skilled if you're good at deception. And then, if you're a politician, you probably are frowned at for being good at deception, and you probably have an oath you've taken that means you have to be more transparent. See, so it's just a very smarmy place, because different people coming from different positions on, what is ethical behavior, what is honesty, what is trust, does it matter? I think it's a really interesting conversation.
Can
Anyway.
I just offer a national perspective?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I come from Denmark, the same as Barbara originally, and we sort of have a friendly banter with Sweden, our neighboring country. So we're in Europe, we're in the Nordics, and we are actually the two countries that have been in most war in world history, Danes and Swedes. So now I'm talking bad about Swedes. I come from this is my disclaimer. So the Nordics are very often pointed out to be among the happiest populations in the world. So how come the Danes are the happiest people in the world? Well, right now it's the Finns. They don't understand why. I can say that in truth because I'm half Finnish. But so Scandinavia seems to be a very happy people. But somebody said to me a year ago, they said, it's a little bit interesting why Sweden will never come on top of that list. And we immediately agree they will not. And the interesting mental thing in that is actually because they lie and Danes don't. So Danes have the reputation of, I know all you guys from the US, you're going to enjoy this, to be the United States of Northern Europe. That means that we are very friendly, very calm, but we also to the point. So if you ask me, do you think I did a good job? We will most likely say, no, I don't think so. There were bits that were good, but well, no, not really. And that would be honoring our relationship that I tell you the truthful answer, which is quite interesting in this discussion. But then again, if you go to a suite and said, is this company that we're in, should we do this new task? Then in Denmark, you would go, yes, I think so because, or no, I don't think so because, and somebody will make a decision at the end. But in Sweden, you have a group of 10 people, you ask them the question, they will all have to agree. That means somebody has to lie.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. And I think that is another wonderful nuance of sort of the conventions of truth telling and kind of the cultures of truth telling and, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'll just.
How do you achieve consensus?
Well, sometimes you don't, right? I mean, sometimes you just don't. You know, people either, like what Susie's saying, fold, right? Versus really to gain an agreement. But you can achieve alignment, right?
In Intel, we used to have a principle called disagree and commit, which meant that in every meeting, I never really understood it. I mean, in my own case, I disagreed enough times that I walked out. But, you know, but disagree and commit meant you can express your, you know, displeasure or disagreement, but then you had to say, okay, you're on my team, I'm on your team. We're gonna do this even if I think it's wrong. And how does that square? You know, I'm just thinking about this. It's been over 25 years since I worked at Intel, but
I'm curious to ask Susie about, as a Dane, this is my perspective about happiness. I think that Danes are content, right?
Yes.
And there's a level of contentment that equates to happiness, right? You know, and then there's the happiness part, because I was just talking to my sister for a couple hours last night, you know. She's in Copenhagen and she's in this tiny little apartment and she's, you know, and she downsized, blah, blah, blah. And she said, you know, I'm really enjoying this 800 square foot, whatever, right? She's content, which then she says, I'm happy. What do you think of that, Susie?
I think one of my Danish-German like border people, Schleswig-Holstein, Baba knows what I'm talking about. So we have a minority of Danes living in Germany, and they are allowed to enter Denmark without fuss at all. So he went to Denmark after growing up in Germany, and he was with a lot of international students and people working in IT. He said that the people said, the Danes, they're cold, they're difficult to get close to. And then he said to me, I had this sort of vision one day. They're not cold, they're calm. And I think calm is the best expression I ever heard to explain a Dane. That's because if you get fired, that's no big deal. Because the Danish workforce system is made so it's very easy to hire and it's very easy to fire. And that means that the government has taken the risk for the workforce and say, well, we have made a system where you will actually get 80% of your income for 1 year currently. That means that you don't worry about getting fired because you can be calm and think, okay, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe I should take a second education. Maybe I should work for a different company. It's no big deal if I get fired. You can take the education you want to because we get paid to educate ourselves until a certain limit, of course. But every single Dane has a right to not only free education, but also get paid while you're studying. So that means we are calm. We're very, very calm. And sometimes a little bit, you know, if you're calm, are you happy? I think it goes a long way. But can you still be desperate even though that you're calm? Yes, you definitely can.
Wow, that is exactly the opposite of what I have noted in the United States. First of all, in the United States, we're all totally identified with our work. So it's not
So if we get fired, a part of our being has been taken away. So this is which is why
that's true in Denmark
AI
as well, actually. But in a sort of funny way. So I studied in Great Britain for a couple of years, and I did a student job where I was doing